Since Sir Alex Ferguson left, Manchester United have not been the same. They were one of the most successful clubs in England and one of the most successful in Europe during his tenure. But immediately after he left, they crashed and burned. United went from having one coach for 27 years to hiring 7 in 11 years, just because they're looking for the right man. But it seems like they may just have found him, and that right man might have been less than a year old when Ferguson was hired as United's boss. Crazy, isn't it? But could this young man who United have snatched from Sporting CP be the savior of the Red Devils? You'll find out in this video today. First, who is this guy? You probably know him as Sporting's former coach, but he's a lot more than that. So let's start from the beginning. Amorim was born in Portugal, and he fell in love with football as a kid. He started playing professional football in Portugal and played for clubs like Belenenses, Benfica and Braga. He also represented the Portugal national team, going to 2 World Cup tournaments and even playing alongside Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah, CR7's longevity is insane. We know. Amorim retired from professional football in 2017 when he was 32 years old, and many thought that his football story was over, but little did they know that it had only just started. Not long after he retired, Amorim went to get his coaching license from the Lisbon Football Association. But that was not all he did. Determined to be the best at what he does, he also did postgraduate studies in psychomotor education, and then he spent a week interning under the greatest Portuguese manager of all time, Jose Mourinho. In 2018, he decided he was ready, so he took up a job as coach of Casa Pia, a team playing in the 3rd division of Portuguese football. But it started horribly. This was just the 3rd division. But despite interning with Mourinho for a week, Amorim lost his first 2 games. It was a little embarrassing, but the way he reacted showed that this guy was certainly going to go far. After losing his 2nd game, Amorim announced that if he lost his next match, he would quit immediately. There was already pressure on him, but he doubled it with that statement. And he backed it up. He changed his system ahead of the next game, and that was the first time we saw him use a back 3. Did it work? You bet it did. Not only did it work for that game, but it also became the Amorim style. After he made that statement, he went on an unbeaten run, while also playing some really beautiful football. Everything was going well until January 2019, when 6 points were deducted from Casa Pia, and Amorim was suspended for a year. But what had he done? He gave instructions during a game, but he didn't yet have the coaching level required to do so. So he was punished. The ban on him was suspended not long after, but Amorim saw it as a load of rubbish, so he resigned immediately. He probably took that as a sign that he was done at that level, and it was one of the best decisions he'd ever made. By September of that year, his former club Braga hired him to oversee the reserves, and he would go on to win 7 of the 8 games he managed. Seeing that incredible form, the management felt confident about sacking the first-team coach and hiring Amorim to take over. This was just 3 months after he took charge of the reserves. That was how impressed they were. But the big leagues are different from the 3rd division, so people expected him to struggle, especially at the beginning. But instead, he announced himself with a 7-1 win in his first game in charge. And 3 weeks later, he won his first trophy as a coach, leading Braga to a 1-0 win against Porto in the final of the League Cup. It took him just 3 weeks to win Braga their first trophy in 4 years. At this point, it was clear that he was the real deal. Sporting saw what he was doing and immediately snapped him up. This dude had only managed a senior team for 2 months, but Sporting CP, one of the biggest clubs in the country, was sure about putting their destiny in his hands. And it was the best decision they've made in recent history. They paid €10 million to get him, the 3rd highest fee that had ever been paid for a coach at the time, and he joined them in March 2020. He instantly gave the team an identity, something that had been lacking at the club for years. It took him little time to get the team to start playing attractive football, and hope was restored to the fans. In his first transfer window at Sporting, we saw Amorim's incredible talent ID. He signed some top talents like Pedro Porro, João Mario, and Nuno Santos, and welcomed back João Palhinha from his loan spell. He also promoted Matheus Nunes, Nuno Mendes, Gonçalo Inácio, Thiago Thomas, and Daniel Bragança from the academy. So, if you're a United fan, just rest assured that Amorim is going to be signing top talents and developing players from the academy. It's just what he does. And for a club like United with a historically good academy, this must certainly come as good news. But if you think what you've heard so far is good, just wait till you hear what Amorim did in his first full season as Sporting boss. But just before we get into that, if you're enjoying the video so far, slap a like on it and subscribe to the channel. Okay, now back to Amorim. In his first full season at Sporting, he won the League Cup, went on a record 32-game unbeaten run, and ultimately won the Primera Liga, the club's first league title in 19 years. Let that sink in. In just his first full season, he won them their first league title in nearly 2 decades. By the end of his first full season at United, it'll be 13 years since United last won the Premier League. Now, we're not saying he's going to win it at the first attempt, but there's surely a good reason to hope. Another reason for United fans to be excited about Amorim is the fact that he's previously worked with a new signing Manuel Ugarte. In fact, not only have they previously worked together, but it was Amorim who signed Ugarte at Sporting, so it's clear that he likes the Uruguayan, and he'll likely be able to bring the best out of him. Amorim signed Ugarte ahead of his second season at Sporting, and that was another good season. They didn't succeed in defending the league title, but they won the League Cup again and reached the knockout stages of the Champions League for the first time in 13 years. They were eventually knocked out by Man City after losing 5-0 on aggregate, but Amorim made sure not to forget. He wanted revenge, and he made sure to get it before signing out. We'll get to that soon. But the first revenge that was on his mind was getting the league back. But it wasn't to be in the 2022-23 season. Ahead of that season, he permanently lost major players like Palhinha, Núñez and Mendes, and did not sign replacements, so Sporting suffered. But he made sure to take responsibility for not planning well at the beginning of the season. Anyway, they bounced back the following season, and it all started with Amorim signing a certain guy named Viktor Gyökeres, another sign of his very impressive talent ID. Gyökeres was playing for Coventry at the time in the lower tiers of English football, but Amorim was confident that he could turn the Viking into a star. And that was exactly what he did. With Gyökeres leading the attack, Sporting tore Portugal apart and went on to win the league once again. During this season, Amorim was heavily linked with the Liverpool job after Klopp announced that he would be leaving at the end of the season. He was also reportedly close to taking the West Ham job after David Moyes left, but none of that materialized. Sporting thought that they would be losing their boss that summer, but he eventually pledged to stay for the new season. Ahead of the new season, he decided to change things a little. In previous seasons at Sporting, he was always pragmatic in his style, but this time around, he decided to be more daring and dominant. He started to demand more high pressing from his players. He wanted them to win the ball high up the pitch and force errors from the opponents. He also started to drill his team to play out from the back quickly and brilliantly. To properly execute this style, Amorim signed a ball-playing centre-back in Zeno Deba, a Gyökeres understudy in the person of Conrad Harder, and he promoted Giovanni Quenda from the academy, who went on to score in the very first game of the season. But we'll be honest with you, the 2024-25 season started in super embarrassing fashion for Amorim. Sporting went up against Porto in the Portuguese Super Cup, and 24 minutes in, they were already cruising, having secured a 3-0 lead. But somehow, they managed to bottle it, and they ended up losing 4-3. At this point, questions began to arise. Should Amorim return to being pragmatic? Is this dominant football just not for him? Has he bitten more than he can chew? Well, he stunk to his new style and answered all those questions the way he knows how to, with performances on the pitch. Sporting went on to win all their first 11 league games, with an aggregate scoreline of 39-5 to show that they meant business. Amorim left them at the top of the table with 33 points from a possible 33, having won every single one of their league games that season. 11 games in, they were already 6 points clear at the top of the table and clear favourites for the title. And they maintained a similar form in the Champions League. They currently sit in second place, having won 3 of their 4 games, including the big one against Manchester City. So, you see, after City hired Sporting's former director of football to become their director of football, rumours started going around that Amorim would replace Pep as coach of City. But not long after, United sacked Ten Hag and immediately went for Amorim. Reports saying that Amorim asked if he could remain with Sporting till the end of the season, but United said they wanted him right away, so he agreed to join in November. His last game as Sporting coach was the Champions League fixture against United's neighbouring rivals Man City, and before the game, Amorim said that he knew that if he won, United fans would think that the new Alex Ferguson had arrived. And well, can you blame them? Not only did Amorim win, but he also won comfortably. He beat City 4-1, making that just the 3rd time ever that a Pep-managed team had conceded 4 goals in a single Champions League game. What was interesting was that City scored first, but Sporting were able to pull off an emphatic comeback. Their second goal came immediately after the kickoff of the second half, and it was one of the most beautiful build-up goals we've seen from any team the entire season. To do that against Pep Guardiola's Manchester City was such a huge statement. That was the best parting gift Amorim could have given the fans. But he still had just one more gift before he left. In his last game in charge, Sporting found themselves 2 goals down at halftime against Braga. But Amorim was not going to say goodbye with a loss. No way. They pulled off a remarkable comeback in the second half and ended up winning the game 4-2, thanks to a brace from 19-year-old Harder who'd come off the bench. So, you see, this is a guy who can cook with United. First, he loves youth players, so the likes of Garnacho, Menu, Ahmad, Collier, and other unearthed gems in the academy will benefit so much. Thanks to his proven talent ID, the fans will also have some confidence in the signings he makes, which will be a huge relief from Ten Hag, who only seemed to sign Dutch or former Ajax players. And let's talk about the tactics. Amorim likes to line up with a 3-4-3 formation, which will certainly benefit some of United's major players like Lisandro, who's a ball-playing centre-back, Mazraoui and Dalot, who can be good wing-backs, Ugarte, who he's worked with before, and of course Bruno, who's a very direct attacking midfielder. Amorim can also turn Højlund into a beast like he did with Gyökeres, and we could see Rashford return to his best under this system. The former Braga man has also shown that he has the right mentality to be a United coach. He's great at handling media pressure, and he has a very ruthless winning mentality. I mean, this is the guy who came out and said that if he didn't win his next game, he would quit. This is the kind of mentality that United need, especially right now. Someone who takes responsibility for bad performances and doesn't just try to explain it away. And we can't overlook his age either. This guy isn't even 40 yet. This is the kind of guy you should trust with your footballing project. If this works, he could oversee United for the next decade, and the Red Devils will certainly benefit from some consistency for a change. But it certainly won't be easy. The United job is one of the most difficult jobs in world football, and there'll be a lot of pressure from the get-go. Experienced guys like Moyes, Mourinho, and Van Gaal got sacked, so it won't be a walk in the park for Amorim. Nah, far from it. But if there's one person you can trust, it's a guy who won Sporting their first title in 19 years, who beat Pep 4-1 in the Champions League with a more inferior team, who gave Sporting a new and recognizable identity, who led Braga to their first win away at Benfica in 65 years, who put an end to Braga's 4-year trophy drought, who takes responsibility when he loses. This is a man you can trust. But how do you think his career at United will go? Could this be the start of a new era at Old Trafford? Or is it just the same old, same old? Tell us what you think in the comments. And since we're talking about the Red Devils, just click on that link so we can tell you all about the history of Manchester United.